Welcome to Businessworld series on public policy and governance. We are here today with Mr. Arun Maira, former member of the Planning Commission from 2009 to 2013. Thank you for being with us today, Mr. Maira. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Real pleasure to be with you, Nita.
What were the highlights of your 5 years at the Planning Commission?
I had the privilege of being in a very unique place in any country, to be in the cockpit of a plane with the Prime Minister of the country flying the plane, and you sit behind the Prime Minister and can see the world going on around you, beneath you, your whole country. The Prime Minister, of course, is busy actually flying the plane, and you have the privilege of looking around and seeing things. And the variety of people, the large numbers of people that I met from different parts of India, different segments of Indian society and the economy, I could never ever have met unless I had been there. The second thing was that as I joined the Planning Commission, the Prime Minister said that he had tried when he was in the Planning Commission some 25 odd years before that to change the Commission, and he said even later attempts had been made to change the Planning Commission because it was ossified. It was an institution created for another era. And meanwhile the country had changed. There had been reforms that he himself had been part of in 91 and thereafter, and the world had changed, become much more open. And the Planning Commission was carrying on mostly like it was, mostly. So the gap between what the country needed of an institution at the center and what the institution was had been increasing rapidly. It was a big challenge, and he said, well, you are known as a change expert, so I'm throwing this challenge at you. How can we do this? So applying myself to that while also doing the other work that is expected of a member of the Planning Commission, very hard but very rewarding, because I did get to understand why it's so difficult to change established institutions, and then how would one go about changing, especially such an institution which is so embedded, so large, so important, embedded in a very large system of government, which itself is difficult to change. So I learned quite a bit about how to change things.
During the last 2 years of the Planning Commission, what kind of introspection was happening in terms of how the Commission itself needed to change and the steps it needed to take to facilitate this change?
The work had begun immediately in the first year of the new Commission when the Prime Minister asked me that question. And so we did a lot of work, not just about the thinking, but about the doing of establishing new functions for a central body to perform. For example, new ways to get the states together in which they are not being topped down to or given money, but getting them together for them to learn how they could be more effective in delivering services to their citizens, whether it's in healthcare or education or management of power and distribution. So setting up those platforms on the side, because the Planning Commission itself was carrying on doing things like the way it always had done. Also in terms of the planning process, the Planning Commission was required to make a 5-year plan and to make it in a certain format and to use an established process of consultation with the state governments to produce it, all of which needed to change. And it's very difficult to redesign an aircraft while you're flying it. It seems dangerous to do it because you don't know whether you're going to crash or you'll make the whole system crash. So the Planning Commission was carrying on doing things the way it always had done because there was an expectation of ministries, states and others that that's how it's supposed to be, even though they're frustrated by it. And so we had to create these new functions on the side, alongside, and they were created, 2 or 3 of them, very important ones. You mentioned a new way of planning in a dynamic situation with the participation of the stakeholders. Scenario planning is the word. Creating also learning platforms around the different subjects in which not just the states, but other stakeholders can be involved. Like in the urban areas, how do you reform urban governance? So we created these platforms. They weren't the big thing. The big thing was the Planning Commission flying on the way it always had. In the last year or two, time seemed to be running out. And also at that time, you could recollect, this was 2013 and 14, the frustration of people in India with governance was so high. Economy slowing down. So at that time, one felt very concerned that what we should have done for changing the Planning Commission should have been done already. But it wasn't done. So what can we do in the remaining year and a half? At that time too, the people in charge of government, the Prime Minister, they were so busy fighting the fires that there was no time to actually change the house. if you use the analogy of the plane flying, that I'm just trying to make sure the plane is flying. Don't tell me to change the design of the engine at this stage. Just got to keep the plane on course. So in the last year, we realized that we could not do much more to implement the changes that we had determined needed to be done. But what we could do was to put down, for the sake of the next commission and the next government, that this is the work we have done. It was very solid work. And this suggests that this is what the new body, our body should look like, the new form of it. And here's the work already done on creating some new capabilities. You can take advantage of these and build more. So the country would benefit by the continuity of learning, the institutional knowledge passed on to the next people who are going to lead the Planning Commission. And we expected there would be a Planning Commission with another deputy chair and so on, and they should get the benefit of this.
When the charter of NITI Aayog came out, a lot of the charter must have seemed very familiar to you, an extension of the work that you had been doing for the past 2 years and some of the ideas you had started thinking about in terms of the transformation of the Planning Commission.
Not some. I felt almost all of it describing the essence of what we wanted a new body to do. So it was all, therefore, very comforting.
Yes.
When you find ideas that you have spent so much time with being adopted, you feel good about it. Yeah? And it's not important that you are with the idea, it's that the idea has got its life. It's turning out to be a useful and accepted idea. So I felt very good. When I read the charter on the 1st of January 2014, I was jumping around with delight. I said, I couldn't have written it better. And I'm so glad that the Prime Minister signed off to say, this is what this body is going to do. And he gave it a good name also, an institution for transforming India rather than a planning commission. In fact, if I can go back, Dr. Manmohan Singh, in the first year when we had thought about what the body should do in this day and age, had used two phrases. He said, we should be a systems reform commission and not a budget making body. And we should be an SA, a force in persuasion and not a writer of long plans. And what the NITI Aayog Charter says is just that, reform the systems, get people engaged so that they are persuaded, and they will then do collaboratively what needs to be done to transform the country, a national institution for transforming India. It was very well put.
NITI Aayog has announced that it will be replacing the 5-year plans with a 15-year vision document. What, in your view, needs to happen to make this a consultative process? What type of methodology should they be thinking about? How do we make this a living document that people can take ownership of?
You use 4 key words: document, methodology, living, and ownership. A plan, no matter how detailed it is, okay, it's a document. Yes? The method of producing it is some people get together, get all the numbers together, they do some sort of peripheral consultation, but they are aiming to produce a complete, accurate, comprehensive document. No one perhaps reads it, it's just too comprehensive, too detailed, too long, so no one's persuaded by it. Yes, they're not involved with bringing about the results the document says should be produced. So therefore, methodology is important. The method of producing a vision, I'm using the word vision instead of a planned document, because it's supposed to be a guide to the system. So it is a vision of where we want to be. Now it's where we want to be, then people have to be part of saying where they want to be. And unless they feel part of this vision, they are not going to persuade themselves to change anything to help bring it about. So it has to be a participative, collaborative process to produce this vision, 15 years out, a journey which people are going to take together. It's difficult to get, 1.2 billion people to create a vision together. So you need a method of involving, consulting different stakeholder groups. And you need to know who are the critical ones. And from those stakeholder groups, who are voices that would represent those stakeholders accurately and also be trusted by the whole stakeholder group that when they speak, they're speaking for us. So the early part of understanding your own system and then planning the consultation, the participation is key in producing a vision that will be a living vision.
What are your plans post Planning Commission, and what are you doing with your time now?
Well, I realized when I was in the Planning Commission, it was something that was in my mind before I joined the Planning Commission, that I like to help systems of people who, by working together, can produce a result that matters to them all together. So it's the process of people collaborating to bring about a change in their world that I like to help with. And so to hone my own skills in doing that and to make myself available to people who want to do that is what I like to do. So I've got a metaphor in my mind. I keep reminding myself that it's about me playing the drums, which is just providing a rhythm, but the music is being played by the artist on stage, and they will be in the glamour, they'll be in the scene, they'll be applauded, but they do need a rhythm behind, and I'm very happy to provide the rhythm to them as they play. So I've got engaged with several initiatives and organizations of people, and they're generally informal in that sense. They're not corporations nor formal government organizations, but substantial enterprises, civil society involved, corporations involved, sometimes some parts of government involved, or people, stakeholders collaborating together, wishing to produce something better and different for everybody. So they're asking me, and I come and play the drum for them and help them with the process of making things happen.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting discussion, and we hope to hear much more from you.
Look forward to that. It was a pleasure.